The questions that have been popping up throughout the last 10 years are really related to the way how we relate to each other, the way how the organizations relate to each other, the way how individual relates to the organization, and of course, how the society, what's the role of the society in all this. Is it really this egocentric top-down society, the only thing we can imagine? I'm asking you to clarify that in your heart. What kind of society would you rather be in, ego and hierarchical, or eco and network-based society? Do you just want to keep driving the ownership issues to the last possible boundary? Or do you think we could start discussing also responsibility? We cannot skip the topic of profits. The challenge is this crematism and offshore businesses and just putting the piles of money together just for the sake of watching it? Or do we have here an opportunity to really spread the value, share the value, and then through that allow the society that it can reinvent itself faster and really constantly support in a positive sense the changes that we need in order to respond to the natural cycles, respond to our emerging needs, which are genuine needs, and of course to keep the society in a vital stage. You know, live the life that we believe we want to live. So what's the real point of eco-civilization? Is it really so much different than the one we have now? No. The elements, in most of the cases, you will find very similar to those that they already exist today. In an organizational sense, in a sense of values, in a sense of focus. But what I'm inviting you into is just to pause for a second and think, what are the organizational structures, for example, that we gather around? Is it really the financing, economy, infrastructure, education that is our goal, that we need to pay attention to? I would rather argue that those are the means and the functions, the attributes with which we have to serve to our society, or to us beings, land, relationship, consciousness, society. That's what I propose as the core subject of attention. All other mechanisms are only the means to serve these basic elements to evolve on its full potential by, at the same time, respecting each other and engaging under the rules of sustainable life. And in today's day, even more importantly, with a strong circular economy concept. I really think we are unique. There is nothing like Earth anywhere else. Are we the civilization of technological breakthroughs? And if we are we ready to take responsibility, or we just do it for the sake of doing it just because we can do it? I have a feeling that we count on technology to save us from any life-challenging situation. B2C, B2B, G2B, B2G is over. We are moving towards human-to-human business concepts. Technology is a mean, not a goal. Are we upgrading technology or downgrading the humans? There is a big question of data ownership.
The past 2 months with the COVID-19 situation everywhere has also taught us again something new. It has taught us again how quickly our public transport has been challenged, how fast we lost trust into the systemic environment that we have, but also how quickly we actually forgot about democracy, how quickly we were able to come together and make quite authoritarian decisions about our civilization and about our societies, because we were faced with a threat that was non-political. We were very easily giving up on many of those things which you mentioned as being at the core of us. First of all, I actually think that one of the really important things that we have to look into is ownership. And I think that ownership is something that in a traditional sense, we will need back. Ownership for me, as a family business entrepreneur, for me, ownership means to give something to the next generation. For me, it's about continuity. To me, ownership also means that what I own, I take good care of. And in a certain way, we have lost that sense of ownership because today we only speak about ownership. What we actually mean is investor type of ownership, which is connected to exits and which is connected to high yields and profits and fast turnarounds. Core of our civilization is the crucial right to protect ownership. And I think this is something we should never lose. I now contradict myself immediately. When we think about technology, we think about data. And when we think about data, I think that the thought about ownership is not relevant. And I think that when we speak about data, we should really stop talking about ownership rights. We should really speak about user rights. When we speak about data, we have to redefine our concept of ownership, but we should never go away from what we have defined as the basic human rights, which include the high protection of ownership, and we should rethink of what we mean with ownership. In its first phase, technology really replaced the human labor. It made life much easier for us. It took a lot of our people all over the world out of poverty. In our second phase of technology development, we entered a stage where we were looking at how can we replace some of the manual work that we are doing. Now in the third phase, we are looking at how can we replace some of the intellectual things that we are doing. Artificial intelligence, machine learning. We have a lot of things where it's good. But now we come to the fourth phase where we have already machines learning to think and trying to feel like people. And then we come to a phase where we have to say, where are the benefits and where are the next phase? How can we make sure that we are still always looking at solutions where mankind is in charge and not the other way around? Technology is a mean, not a goal. And the question is, how do we use it? Right now, we are in a position where the COVID-19 has put us all on remote. It has put us all on using Zoom and Google Hangouts and Teams and all these. We are learning social distancing or distant socializing, and we have to adapt ourselves to a new normal, which is very much now orientated by technology. The question is, how do we now move forward? And how can we make sure that we develop the right technologies and that we learn in a certain way to find the right balance in this discussion?
Is it time for users' rights instead of ownership? Because for me, this is one of the fundamental elements of the prosperous civilization. What is the next step in the data use, and who can benefit from that? At the same time, who is really generating it?
I think the approach that the European Union and the EU in general has is about the user's ownership and the user's rights is the right direction. Data ownership becomes a complex issue, but I think data is becoming more and more a currency in a certain way. And it's a cliche in one way, but we are already today in a situation where we as individuals get advantages if we give our data. And so we trade with our data, whether we like it or not. We are already trading our data. We have to agree on user rights for all the parties that need the data in order to be able to make the society function in a certain way. we cannot undo the development, but the question is, how can we make it a more sustainable development? We have to redefine our competition laws, and we have to redefine how do we regulate the market. We should a little bit let go of the traditional competition laws, open up the markets more, but then regulate the data and regulate access and sharing of that data.
Can we say that in the future we should focus more on people and users, and from that point on then develop the relationships, if you want, or ownerships or rights that are related to any kind of services or products that the individual or the group of people gets into relationship with?
We should define economy more from the perspective of users, and we should always make sure that the user is handling their own data, that the user has the choice that he can make between different services, and that the user with his data can sort of provide the fuel that goes then into creating different kinds of services, and those services should then be enabled. And then we have to find means, simple means, easy means for people to actually create agreements on how to use their data.
After the coronavirus, it's very likely that we will end up with a much more controlled state, with a much more surveillance capacities and less freedom. And this is very likely scenario. Very likely scenarios almost never happen. So we have to be very careful to look for alternative other scenarios and listen to weak signals and walk the path to really grab the opportunity for those for the emergence of new. People argue that user is not educated enough to make the right decisions. I would rather say good than those that have the knowledge, have a responsibility to educate the user. If you don't start trusting people and start showing that that is to the benefit of everyone, then the totalitarian system is really the only option.
One of the problems in many of the European countries today is that we have a very low level of tolerance, and that we are not very much accepting opposition, and that is not healthy for the discussion of democracy.
Even in a new eco-civilization, technology will play an important role. For me, one of big concerns is who controls those that create applications? Who controls those that create digital solutions? What do we need to change in order to make sure that technology stays a tool and that is a democratic tool? What's above everything, democracy or technology?
I think we cannot have a future development where we exclude technology. The advantage of the technology is actually that the human evolution is much slower. As humans, we have a natural built-in system where we resist change, and we resist change where we are worried that we lose more than we could possibly gain. Technology will change regardless of the human development in a certain way. We have to make sure that the balance, how technology is used, is a right one. And in order to do that, we have to first and foremost make sure that we regulate the data right, so that we have the user rights and the my data concept in place. We have to make sure that our education is good, so that we are able to handle data. In the future, people need to be able to read data like they read today alphabet. We also need to make sure that algorithms are based on transparency. We cannot place the responsibility to a machine. innovation environment should be open.
When internet was designed, there was a very clear vision. The concept itself said that no matter which part of the network gets affected, the rest of the network has to work. With the internet concept, I see as a really good example for the technology of the Ecocivilisation, where each node is equally powered and it has pretty much the same rights regardless of how big the corporation or individuals are behind it. From any part of the world, you can access any node that has an IP address on the internet. So for me, that is a truly democratic tool. Like many other things, it got misused in many times and darknet got created. If we had a full-scale transparency from the start, and this is something we can learn from the experience of internet, that would no longer be an issue. Internet concept is distributed completely sort of equal opportunity concepts with a full transparency as an upgrade could be a very good guiding principle for the future of technology for emerging eco-civilization.
Blockchain is something where we can actually really support openness and transparency by creating traceability. In that respect, I think it will be extremely important for circular economy. With the help of blockchain technologies, we can, in the future, we will probably see the replacement of emails and other ways of communicating, and we go to the next level again. Is that good or bad? I think it will just be inevitable.
Innovation is always happening at the edge. In order to become the mainstream, it needs to look first for different levels of supporters. When you create all these new incentives at the edge and you start looking first for those that believe in you, and then you start creating those that follow you, then at one point settlers follow as well. When there is enough followers, they feel more comfortable to join in. So once you have a shared vision, every step you make, you start making towards that shared vision. If things are not in place today, that doesn't mean that they're impossible to do. Lennon says, when I dream by myself, I dream. When I dream with others, I create. So this is the dream I'm inviting you in. This is the dream that I have.